Okay, so the first topic we're going to look at has to do with the quadratic formula. So you see the quadratic formula written there. We're taking the coefficients from our quadratic and putting them into this formula. And then we're solving, right? We do have to be careful if we have a negative b value because the formula has a negative b, so you'll have a negative b, right? And negative times negative is positive. So it's not necessary for you to memorize the quadratic formula, but you'll use it so much that I find it to be really helpful. One thing you can do is write it down every time you work a problem, then you'll kind of accidentally learn it. The other thing that you can do is learn my quadratic formula song. So I'm going to do Pop Goes the Weasel first because I sing this in my head every time I do a problem. Okay? And it goes, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So that's pretty good, right? And you'll hear me sing that a lot. So we could also do Frosty the Snowman if you prefer. Maybe that's more apropos given how cold it is outside. And it is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So either way, that's just a little fun, right, for you to think about how you want to do these problems. Oh, I didn't mean for that to be there. Let's go back. So what we do is first we identify A, B, and C. So as you can see in this first problem, A is 5, that's the quadratic coefficient. B is negative 5, that's the linear coefficient. And then our constant is negative 1. So we're going to put that into the formula. And remember our formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, right? It's going to be in your head when you sleep. Okay, so now we're going to put our information in there. So x is a negative 5, right? Plus or minus the square root of b squared. So here, notice I didn't write negative 5 in parentheses squared. I wrote b squared. I wrote 25. I recommend doing that. Just square it in your head and put it in there so that you don't accidentally make it negative, right? Because whether b is positive or negative, b squared is going to be positive. Okay? Minus 4ac, so I just plug all that in there, divided by 2a. Now we're just going to clean it up. We have a negative times a negative 5, so that's a positive 5. We end up with the square root of 25 plus 20 all over 10. 25 plus 20 is 45. Now I want to clean up that square root of 45. So remember that 45 is 9 times 5, and the square root of 9 is 3, so I can pull that out. When I write that answer in Alex, just like the other stuff, we can't put plus or minus in Alex, so you have to write 2 answers. I also want to caution you that you cannot simplify the 5 and the 10 here. And we can't simplify that because the 5 is locked in place by that plus or minus, right? So we can't simplify that. But we'll have some in a few minutes that we can simplify. Okay, next one. A is 2, B is 7, C is negative 5. We're going to plug it into the formula, right? And again, if you write the formula down every single time, you might accidentally memorize it. And then that keeps you from having to look it up every time, right? So then x is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared. So 49 minus 4ac all over 2a. Now we're just going to clean it up. Square root of 49, and then that's plus 40, right? All over 4. So we have negative 7 plus or minus root 89 over 4. We cannot simplify root 89. So we just got to split it up to put our answer in Alex. Okay? Let's look at another one. So figuring out A, B, and C. Writing our formula down. Plugging it in. Negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 minus 4 times 8 times negative 3. all over 2a. So simplifying, that's the square root of 1 plus 96 all over 16. That gives me the square root of 97, which I cannot simplify, so then we just split it up. Okay? Those aren't too bad, right? So now we're still going to use the quadratic formula. It's still the same, but now we're going to have some imaginary numbers. So if what's under the root is negative, remember that the square root of -1 is I. So here we're going to have some complex solutions, and complex just means we have imaginaries. So same thing. We're going to find our A, B, and C. We're going to plug it into the formula. Notice this time I didn't write it down, but there's it's at the top of the page, right? And there's my -3 plus or minus the square root of B squared, which is 9, minus 4AC, all over 2A, right? And then we're going to clean it up. And we end up with, let's see, -3 plus or minus the square root of -75 all over 14. So that's -3 plus. So remember, the negative is going to come out as the I, right? And then we have the square root of 75. Well, that's the same thing as 25 times 3. So the square root of 25 is 5. So we'll have 5I root 3 all over 14. And then again, when you write that, you would write it as -3 plus 5I root 3 all over 14 and -3 minus 5I root 3 all over 14. So here, same thing, A, B, and C. There's my formula. I'm going to plug it in. -b plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So this one actually, even though it's with the complex solutions, doesn't have a complex solution because that C value is negative, making it a plus 24. So then I have plus root 40. Let's simplify that a little bit. So that's -4 plus or minus. So the square root of 40, 40 is 4 times 10. Square root of 4 is 2. So 2 root 10 all over 12. Now here, what's important to notice is that all 3 of those pieces there are divisible by 2, right? So we can simplify this. So we'll divide each one of those by 2, and my final answer will be -2 plus or minus root 10 all over 6. And again, you would split that up when you write it, okay? For this one, same thing, A, B, and C. Now I'm going to plug it in. Negative B. Well, it's -b, right? So -5 plus or minus the square root of B squared, which is 25, minus 4AC, all over 2A. So cleaning that up, that gives me 25 minus 40 under the root. So I have 5 plus or minus the square root of -15 over 10. So the negative is going to come out as an I, but 15 is 5 times 3, so there's no perfect squares in there. So that's 5 plus or minus I root 15 all over 10. Remember, we cannot cancel that 5 and the 10 because there's nothing with the I that's also divisible by 5. We can't mess with what's inside the root. It's locked in there by that root. So our answer here would be both pieces. Okay? Last one. So we have our ABC. Plug it in. -b plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So simplifying there, I have 4 minus 60 under the root. So that gives me the square root of -56. So when I simplify that, 56, it might take you a minute to do some division and find it, but it's 4 times 14. So the I is going to come out, and the square root of 4 is 2. So there's our 2I root 14 all over 6. And then to clean it up, remember that all 3 of those are divisible by 2. So I can divide them all by 2. And I'll get 1 plus or minus I root 14 over 3. Remember that we do not need to make that a 1I, right? We don't need that. All right? And then if we were going to write it in Alex, we would need to write the plus and the minus. All right, that's it for quadratics for now.